You didn't miss the message, you just weren't ready to hear it yet. Alan Watts believed that truth is never withheld. It's timed, not by accident, but by intelligence, divine intelligence. And when the moment is right, when your spirit is finally quiet enough, surrendered enough, cracked open just enough, the message arrives, not as thunder, but as clarity. That thing you couldn't understand last year? That quote that felt vague 2 months ago? That book you put down halfway? It wasn't meaningless. You just hadn't become the version of yourself who could receive it yet. Watts said that the illusion of separation from others, from ourselves, from God, is necessary for awakening, because the soul doesn't grow through explanation. It grows through experience, through confusion, through loss, through silence. And only after that silence has hollowed you out, only when the ego is finally quiet, do the deepest truths land. You don't hear them, you feel them. And that moment, that sacred click, changes everything. Suddenly, you get it, not with your mind, but with your whole being. You understand why the pain had to come. You understand why they didn't stay. You understand why you felt stuck for so long. You understand why the old you had to die. It doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It feels like preparation. And if this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Because Watts didn't teach from theory. He taught from observation, from watching how life, when left alone, reveals itself to the ready. And you, right now, are ready. Ready to see what your past self wasn't strong enough to face. Ready to stop blaming life for delays and start understanding that everything was right on time. Not because you finally earned clarity, but because you finally stopped resisting it. The moment you stop chasing, and everything starts arriving. You were taught to chase it, the success, the clarity, the answers. You were told that if you want something badly enough, if you try hard enough, it'll come. But Alan Watts turned that on its head. He said, you don't get it by chasing. You get it by becoming the space that allows it to arrive. Let that sink in. It doesn't show up when you grip harder. It shows up when you let go. And most people never do. They pray for peace but resist the silence. They ask for clarity but avoid the stillness. They seek purpose but cling to roles that have already expired. The more they push, the more life seems to pull away. Not because it's cruel, but because the act of chasing confirms that you believe you don't have it. You see, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And when your energy is frantic, desperate, overthinking, you delay the very thing that's trying to meet you. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you surrender, life begins to rearrange around you. Not because you gave up, but because you got out of the way. That's what Watts meant when he said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The harder you try to grasp it, the more it slips through. But when you relax into it, when you trust the unfolding, you realize it was never about finding yourself. It was about uncovering what was already there. This is the moment when things begin to arrive, not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them. And what were you using to block them? Expectation, comparison, self-doubt, trying to figure out the whole staircase before taking the next step. But now, you're starting to trust the step. You're starting to walk with presence, not performance. And that's when alignment starts showing up everywhere. That's when people say, it's like the universe started responding to me. No, you just stopped trying to control it. You finally became available to receive. Why it had to hurt first, and how pain made you receptive to truth. You didn't hear the truth before because you couldn't. You weren't ready to hold it, not because you were weak, but because you were still holding on to everything that would have distorted it. Alan Watts believed that real clarity doesn't arrive through ease. It arrives through shattering, through the dismantling of the illusions we've mistaken for identity. It had to hurt, not because you deserved pain, but because pain makes you pay attention. Pain interrupts the autopilot. Pain slows you down. Pain clears out the noise. And when it clears, when the chaos finally quiets, the message arrives, not with fanfare, but like a whisper through the wreckage. Now you're ready. Watts saw pain not as punishment, but as purification, a necessary silence, a breaking open of the ego's shell, so that something deeper could speak. And you've heard it now, haven't you? Not with your ears, but with your body, with your stillness, with the way your heart softened after it was torn apart. You get it now, and why the relationship ended, why the timing didn't work, why nothing made sense for so long, why your fire had to die before your truth could burn. Because without that unraveling, you would have kept going in circles, climbing ladders that led nowhere, chasing dreams that weren't yours, becoming versions of yourself that impressed everyone but you. Pain stopped that. And now, in its aftermath, you're starting to feel something else. Readiness. Not readiness to perform, but readiness to receive, to sit in the truth and not run, to feel the silence and not fill it, to walk into the unknown, not blindly, but bravely. That's why the message found you now. Not because it just showed up, but because you finally opened the door. The day you stop searching and start seeing what was always there. The irony of awakening is this: what you were looking for was never hidden. It was always right in front of you, in the silence, in the breath, in the now. But your mind was too noisy to see it. Your ego was too busy performing. Your fear was too desperate for control. So the truth waited, quietly, patiently, until the moment you were finally still enough to notice. Alan Watts said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. That panic, that need to be someone, to get somewhere, to solve everything, is what blocks the view. And then one day, it all stops. You stop needing to understand everything. You stop chasing the next moment. You stop collapsing every time life doesn't go your way. Instead, you breathe. You sit. You see. And when that happens, something miraculous unfolds. Life starts revealing itself. Not as something you need to fix, but something you can receive. You notice the way the light falls in the room. You feel the sacred in a sip of tea. You realize the peace you craved was never in the future. It was underneath the noise. The message finally lands, not because you searched harder, but because you surrendered deeper. You stopped asking, "When will I get there?" And you started asking, "What is here right now?" And that's the moment God, or Source, or awareness, or life whispers, "You're ready." If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're remembering, returning, reclaiming your inner ground. So trust that the video YouTube shows you next, the one appearing now, is not random. It's the next doorway, the next layer, and it will meet you exactly where you are. If this resonated, take a moment to subscribe. Drop a comment below, not for the algorithm, but to mark this chapter in your journey. We'll see you in the next depth. Depthoria continues.